In advance of reading this statement to you that the state requires that I read to you before your abortion, I just want to apologize for having to read this to you. Some of the language I think is a bit off-putting and difficult to a woman who has had to give this decision a lot of thought already. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry. We are required to by North Carolina law.
Our lawmakers have decided that, women need to be sat down, need to initial every single line, and they need to go sit in the corner for 72 hours until they've made the right decision.
North Carolina has a long history of state-sanctioned controlling of women's bodies and forcing them to give birth. Reproductive oppression has always existed in our state.
The question before the House is the motion that Senate Bill 20 become law, notwithstanding the objections of the governor. All those in favor?
The SB 20 abortion ban is now becoming a part of that history.
Being in the clinic, listening to our clinic manager on the phone with people, having to turn them away or give them other places to go to get care. So sitting there thinking about each individual that we're turning away and wondering, what will their story be? We may never know about that individual, but I think over time we'll see these impacts on people and their lives.
We really have to make sure that we're taking history with us, centering it and learning from it as we move forward. When we see attacks on abortion and bodily autonomy and reproductive health care access, it's about control and perpetuating violence that we know women have faced, people of color have faced for generations and centuries. In the South and in North Carolina particularly. Broadly, abortion has always existed. In indigenous populations, similar to birth, abortion was just as sacred and communal of a practice.
For enslaved people, contraception and abortion were ways of fighting back against white supremacy. Enslaved women were violated by being harassed, raped, or forced into concubinage. They tried to limit their pregnancy and childbearing with whatever means available. White women, under the control of their husbands, sought to end unwanted pregnancies as well.
Looking back to slavery, we know the ways that Black women in particular faced violence at the hands of slave owners. The South has always actually been a huge site of resistance for Black people in particular because of that history. Midwifery care and just communal care for our people was one way that Black folks did that.
Midwives represented reproductive agency for women in this era. Abortion was part of the scope of care midwives provided to women and birthing people at the time.
Midwives were a core part of the foundation of the structure of communities.
In the late 19th century, North Carolina, along with all other states, passed anti-abortion legislation.
In particular, Black midwives held a lot of power and were really admired and recognized in a way that gave Black people power. And that was a threat to white men in particular.
When white male physicians seeking to profit from the reproductive field pushed midwives out, abortion access in North Carolina declined. But midwives fought back. Underground networks of Black and white midwives continued to provide abortion care.
There's always been groups of women primarily who, no matter what the legal landscape looked like around abortion in that time, were just committed to making sure our people had access to the care that they needed.
In the late 1920s and 30s, law enforcement turned a blind eye to abortion. But slowly, physicians and nurses providing abortions became widely targeted.
It's not surprising at all because here we are today watching providers getting criminalized.
I mean, I'm angry, but I'm also just disappointed that legislators did not take the advice of the medical community, really speaking out to say this is dangerous.
The House will come back to order.
You know, many of the lawmakers that were reading what the bill contained didn't understand it, partly because they didn't write it, but also they didn't understand the medical terms. They couldn't pronounce the word anomaly, and it was embarrassing to watch that. These people who have all this power, who don't really understand the issues at play, dictating what kind of medical care can be provided in our state.
Because of the pressure and stigma around abortion broadly, it's really hard to tell your story and speak vocally about it, especially the way that we're seeing folks being criminalized today.
Getting an abortion meant I would not be forever tied to my abuser. I have been on birth control. When I got pregnant, deep down I knew I should not be tied to this man. My desire to be a mother is strong, but my desire to break generational cycles is stronger. My pregnancy was the shock of a lifetime since my husband had a successful vasectomy many years ago. I love being a mother more than anything. When I realized how unrealistic it was to have more children, I spiraled hard. Having another child would mean sinking back into debt. This is not a quick story, but I'll try. Our baby tested positive for Turner syndrome. She would die before reaching birth. The clinic day came. Protesters approached us. My partner told them our story. They continued to call us murderers through their megaphone. It was never about fetal death. I named our daughter Mercy.
SB 20 ultimately is going to mean that families and individuals have to go through with pregnancies that are unwanted.
This bill is anti-woman, it is anti-child, it is anti-family, it is a power grab over our bodies, and it is a further attack on healthcare in North Carolina.
I think that it's really important for North Carolinians to not feel isolated or alone or hopeless in this moment. It's actually a really crucial moment for us to mobilize.
How long can you fight until you just get exhausted? Well, the answer is for as long as it takes. As long as it takes.
My body, my choice. My body.
We see the numbers and the strategy of the folks that are in power, and it's going to take truly all of us across all different race, class, gender identities to recognize our stake in this fight. We actually have to come together, learn ourselves, learn our neighbors. No one else is going to do it for us. It has to come from us.